I use Neovim, aka the greatest text editor. And one of the best parts, and also the worst parts about Neovim, is the configuration. Neovim is hugely customizable, and everyone's Neovim configuration is very different and suited to their own preferences, which makes Neovim a very good editor for those that are willing to spend the time to configure it. However, configuring Neovim can take a while and is difficult to get started. So in this video, I'm going to be going over my own Neovim configuration, so all of the plugins and keymaps I use, and also what you should do for your own Neovim setup. So to begin with, your Neovim configuration should be under the nvim folder in your .config directory in your home directory. So from your home directory, go to .config, and if you don't have a Neovim configuration, you want to make a directory called nvim, and since for me my Neovim directory already exists, we're just going here, and you want to put all of your config files into this directory. And this is going to be for Unix operating systems, so for Linux and Mac OS. If you're using Windows, this nvim folder will be under a different directory. So to start, we'll be using Lua for our configuration. And you want to create a file called init.lua under your Neovim directory. So in our init.lua file, we have a few lines here. We'll go over some of these later, but let's just look at the last line here, which is important. So I put require. So in Lua, require just pretty much runs a file, right? In this case, we're requiring this, which is my username. I just use this as sort of like a namespace to differentiate the files in my configuration with, like, let's say a file from like a plugin, right? So here I opened up the file tree, and you can see that in our nvim directory, we also create a Lua directory. And this Lua directory will create another directory with whatever name you want to have here, whatever namespace. And here, since we call in our init.lua, we call require the folder name, the directory name, we call the init.lua file from this directory. So in our init.lua here, in this new directory with this namespace, we can call all of our files in this directory like this. So the first file let's go over is options, which is under the Lua, then whatever directory you create, and then under options.lua. So call require this. And then here, this is just the format I use for setting all the options in Neovim. So I just create in Lua a quick map called options, and here has whatever name of the option and then whatever we want to set it at. And then at the end, we have a quick for loop that says for option and value. In our options, we set the vim vim.option, and then whatever the name of the option is, let's say like title, for example, equals something, or should here be true, something like this. So we'll take this line, title equals true, and it'll run this code here. I'll run this code here for every single value in our options map. So let's go over some of the options I use. Against most of these, you can probably find in some other config. I think these are some reasonable settings, right? So of course, auto indent, smart indent, go ahead, tab stop 2. That just means whenever you press tab, it's gonna be 2 spaces. Shift width I forgot what this is, probably it's the same thing. Expand tab just means that whenever you tab, they're created spaces instead of actual tab characters. Show tab line, I just forgot what this is. Most of these I've set like a year ago and then I haven't touched yet. Number is for the line numbers at the side. Relative number is kind of important. So does this work? So here, if we set relative number to false, and if I run SO, this just runs whatever file we're in for the configuration. So here, if I set relative number to true, you'll see that the line numbers go from 1 at the top all the way down to whatever number, like 55 at the bottom, and the line numbers stay the same. If I put relative number as true, whatever line I'm on will show the actual line number that it's supposed to be, except all of the other line numbers are relative to the line that I'm on. So in this example, I'm on line 13 and line 12. Usually this would show line 12 here, right? But since I have relative number, it shows 1 because it's 1 away from the line I'm on. And this is useful for, let's say, if I want to jump characters to the bottom, let's say I want to jump to this hidden equals true, I just go 8J and it jumps down 8, right? 10K jumps out 10, and I can quickly move vertically with this. So anyways, we're not going to go through all of the different options, but you can, of course, search up different options that you might want to set to something other than the default. All right, so let's go over, let's see, what else in our init. So here in my init.lua, we also have commands. So these are some custom commands that I've created. So most of this is, let's say, build, debug build, run, and yeah, so these are just some commands that I've created because I've noticed myself using these very often. So for example, the build command, it looks through this list of different file types and it chooses a build option for whatever specific file type I'm using. So if I'm doing a leak code, let's say we're using C++, I want to just compile it, just the file itself, just compile the file, and that's all that I want. No other build settings, just I want to compile the file. I just run the build command and it'll build it. Debug build, of course, and then run just runs whatever that I have open. So let's say I'm on main.cpp, I run the build command, it builds a main.o, and then my run command, it'll run main.o. That's what it does. So again, yeah, so in Vim you can create your own commands that run anything that you really want it to. All right, so back to init.lua, the next thing we'll go over is lazy. So lazy, pretty sure I'm open. Lazy.nvim is a plugin manager for Neovim. So this is what I'm gonna be using to manage all of the plugins. There are many plugin managers. I used to use packer.nvim, though I've switched over to using lazy.nvim just because I think packer.nvim is not maintained anymore and there might be issues in the future. So I'm just using lazy.nvim. So again, for any plugin that you want to include in your Neovim configuration, you can just search up the whatever GitHub repo, and there usually will be instructions for installation for stuff. So for the this package manager, lazy.nvim, we just add this, which I directly just copy, paste up here, and then you write whatever required lazy.setup plugins, and in here we'll put plugins, whatever plugin we want in this plugin manager, so we don't have to manually install every plugin. We just put it in our plugin manager and it will handle it for us. So right now I'm gonna just go over some of the plugins that are, that I think you should have in your configuration, and I'm gonna go through some plugins that I have in my configuration which aren't really necessary, but I just like to have. So let's go over some of the more important plugins first. So the first plugin here is LSP0. So of course there are many options for LSP and completion and auto completion. There's a lot of different options. I just choose to use LSP0, and this is a plugin to handle all of the boilerplate code, right? To have the completion and the LSP servers working. So instead of manually configuring the auto completion and all of the language servers, this just handles it for you. So these are some of the plugins that are dependencies of this plugin. So pretty much this LSP0 plugin depends on other plugins to also work. So yeah, so this is for auto completion, this is for the language server protocol support, and then we also have some snippets. So yeah, I think this is a very important to have at least just some plugin to help you with auto completion. Is a very important feature for me, for any like text editor, and I just choose to use LSP0. Okay, and of course you can find all of these files. You can find my whole configuration under my .files repo. So you can look at all the configurations and stuff if you want. Anyways, let's look at some other stuff. Okay, we'll get back to this later because these are some plugins that are, not as necessary, but just nice to have. Let's see what else. So navigation. So navigation also is very important for a text editor, right? You want to be able to navigate not only just the file itself, which Vim is very good at with the Vim motions. I have videos on the Vim motions as well. But Vim motions really only apply to when you're within a file like this. Navigation, I should probably call this file navigation, right? File navigation is not really handled with like Vim motions, so we have some plugins to help with file navigation. The first one is Neovim tree, which is just a file tree here. So you can have this open on either the left side, you have the right side. I have it configured where if I open the file tree, it just takes up the whole screen. That's just the way I like it. I just have it on the right, but at this point, I just have it open the whole thing. And we'll talk about how you can, instead of having to type out Neovim tree toggle and then it shows here, we'll talk about how to set up Keybinds so that you can do it quick, right? Another plugin that I like for file navigation is Harpoon. So Harpoon is a plugin where you can, go to a file. Let's say, let's open a file tree. Let's go init dilute. We can add it again with a keymap. We'll talk about the different keymaps later, but you add it to this list of files, and then you can very quickly open them from this list. And this is very useful in, when you're working on projects and there are, specific files that you're working on that you're going to be opening very often. It's good to be able to just toggle through them very quickly. And then Telescope and Vim. Telescope is a plugin for searching through files. So let's say if I wanted to, well, I have the keybind for it. Very quick, just open up Telescope and we can search for different like colors.lua, init.lua, and look through all the init.luas, whatever. And you just search for files by their name. And you can also search for other stuff, like let's say searching through all of the contents of the file. So instead of searching the names, you search through the contents. So you see here, if I type in lazy, it'll search and bring up in every instance that this word is in any file. So if you search lazy, it'll bring up every instance that the word lazy is in any file in our whatever directory you have open. So that's pretty useful. Let's see what else we have. Stuff for Git. So let's say lazy Git. This is just like a UI built within Neovim to help you use several like whatever Git commands. We have a UI for it, right? So let's say here there's a bunch of keybinds. You can add whatever files to Git. You can commit these things within here. You can push and pull from whatever repositories. Again, not really adding any functionality. It's just nice to have a little UI for Git. Let's see. So that's lazy Git. What else? Vim, Git gutter. So here you see if I make a change, you'll see. Here I'll zoom in. There's a little plus at the side. If I change a line, okay, well there's an error there. But if I change the line without making an error, you can see there's gonna be a little squiggle. If I delete a line, there's gonna be a minus sign, and pretty much it just tells you all the changes in the file. On the side of here, it just tells you the changes in the file compared to whatever you have tracked in your Vim. In your Git. So let's say we delete this. You'll see here there's a change compared to whatever we have staged in our Git compared to right now. Let's see what else. Undo tree. So this just takes undo tree. This plugin. This takes whatever. Remember in the options we set there to be an undo directory so that it remembers the changes you make even after you quit or close Neovim. So Neovim tree just shows you all of the changes here. You can go back to different stages of your file. You can go through the different changes. That ccc.nvim. This is for color. So let's say if I write out a color in the format like this, if I activate ccc, which again through a plugin with a keybind, you can see that it gives you a little preview of whatever color you can type. So this is useful again sometimes in CSS when we have colors like this. I think RGB also works. Yeah. So again, it just gives you a preview of colors. Say Spectre is, I think this is multiple use. I just use it for search and replace. So let's say if I search Spectre and replace it with testing, right? You'll see that it will replace every instance in the whole project or whatever directory I'm in. Every single file, it will replace every instance of whatever word you search with whatever word you want to replace it with. So let's say testing again. Let's replace the tag with Spectre, and you'll see it changes. All right, so next we're gonna go over one of the more important aspects of your Neovim configuration, which is gonna be the keymaps. So here, I have a file called keymap.lua, and this is a module that just exports all of the functions we need to set a keymap. Now, usually you can just set a keymap in Lua by saying vim.keymap.set, and then the arguments to the function will be first the mode which you're setting the keymap in. So let's say if we set n, this would only set the keymap when you're in normal mode. So for example, if I press, what's the keymap I have? If I press space tab, this will open up the file tree, and that's the keymap I've set. But if I press space tab in insert mode, nothing happens because I've only set it to normal mode. So you can set keybinds or keymaps depending on which mode you're in. So let's say we're to vim.keymap set. First argument would be n for normal mode, v for visual, or is it? Yeah, visual, and then so on, right? T as terminal, I for insert mode, right? So again, usually you only really need the normal mode, visual mode, and insert mode. So the second argument of this would be the left-hand side. So this is what we do. So if I put space, let's say E, right? That is gonna be what I have to press for the keymap to activate. And then the right-hand side is what keys I actually want to map this left-hand side to. So let's say whenever I space E, let's say space S. So I haven't used that keymap. Let's say space S will bind it to insert something, right? And then you'll have some options which you really don't need to worry about right now. So let's say keymap set normal space S to something, right? And really this is sort of the template which is going to be used for all of the other keymaps. But with this file, I just created a function that runs this vim.keymap.set, except we're able to set them to different functions. So example, instead of having to type this out, we type n no remap, and then we get the left-hand side, and then the right-hand side here, and then just options, right? So instead of setting something like this, we can go over to our remaps. We're able to get the remaps from requiring the keymap file, and this because this file returns this this module that contains the functions like no remap, and then I for insert mode, v, and then so on, right? So instead of setting a keybind like this, which you could do, I just have this file so you can set it with this function here, like this. So let's go over some of the keymaps that I use. And I'll just go over some that I think would be good to include in your own config. So we'll not worry about those. So this is one keymap, which is JK to enter normal mode. So this is a keymap set in insert mode. So whenever I'm in insert mode, you'll notice that when I press J, my cursor stays on the J for a moment, right? If I press any other character, my cursor moves forward. If I press J, my cursor is on the J for a while, and that's because I've set JK to a key binding. So JK, just if I press JK, you'll notice that there's nothing inserted, and I just go into normal mode. So I just prefer this keybind because on this keyboard, the escape key is pretty close. I tap it here. On other keyboards, the escape key is all the way in the left corner. So I just got used to using JK most of the time. If I'm in insert mode, I need to delete something, I just JK something. If I need to enter normal mode, it's much faster than going all the way to the top left. Let me see any other. Keybinds. This is a keybind that, when I'm in, and this is for visual mode. So if I have something selected, like here, when I press N, what this does, I don't know exactly what this does, but pretty much, all I need to worry about is that when I press N here, when I have something selected, this keymap will just take whatever I selected and copy it to the search. So right now, if I select the N no remap, I press N, and it will search for whatever I have selected. So that's a pretty useful keymap. Though I think they might have, I think Neovim has implemented that just into the editor. I forgot. Let's see, resize window, stack text. Let me just look for any, right, so this is another keymap, let's say, and no remap, so this is for normal mode. If I press leader T, which leader is just the key that you can set, and usually what people do is they'll pick a key as their leader key, and for a lot of their keybinds, they'll use it as sort of like, they'll use it as a prefix to whatever keybind. So you'll see there's a lot of like leader T, leader tab, leader F tab, leader Z, leader CO, right? And it's just a key that you set that you prefix a lot of your keybinds with. So for me, if I go to init.lua, you'll see that in the first line here, I've set vim.g.map_leader equals the space. So that means my space is the leader key. So if I press here, you'll see this keymap. If I press leader T in normal mode, it just opens up a terminal inside Neovim. So that's also a pretty useful keybind. Of course, we have the keybinds for a lot of the plugins I have. So I probably need to reorganize this because I have a lot more keybinds in other folders. So I should probably reorganize this. But you can see if I leader tab, this calls nvim tree toggle, and then it then calls the command only, so that it makes it the only window that's open. And then there's going to be a lot more keybinds, right? Leader GG for lazy Git plugin. And then there's going to be a lot more keybinds as well. Another useful keybind is this leader P in visual mode. So let's see, if I have something select like copy like this v no remap, right, and I select this leader, if I press P to paste it in, you'll notice that now in my paste buffer it's now leader, because in Vim, whenever you delete something, by default I think it selects that, and that's it'll go into your paste buffer. But now if I press with this keybind, right, if I press leader P, notice that now I still have v no remap selected. So pretty much instead of the default behavior, which is to select whatever you deleted, this keymap just lets you still have whatever you originally selected still in your paste buffer. And another keymap that I recommend setting, another set of keymaps, is these, don't mind this one here, is these keymaps right here. So pretty much Control L, Control H, Control K, Control J. So let's say if let's say it was just, right, let's say we have 4 different buffers open here, right? By default in Neovim, the key to press when you want to switch to different split windows is to press Control W and then a direction. So which is the HKJNL. So if I press Control W and then I go K, I'll move up, Control W, J will move down a window. But so I recommend a good setting is to have Control HKJNL bind it to its corresponding Control W and direction, right? Because instead of having to Control W and then press the direction like this, you just press it with HKJNL, right? So these I think is a good keybind to have. Another good keybind I think to have is this Control D, bind it to Control D and then Z. So pretty much, well, I guess I do have the scroll off set pretty high, so doesn't matter as much to me. But again, if your scroll off distance is lower, this is going to be much more important. So let's say if I press Control D, obviously I jump down like I think half a page. If I press Control U, that jumps up half a page, I think. And then what ZZ will do, it'll center your cursor in the middle. So let's say I have my cursor down here. If I press Z twice, it'll center it. So whenever I press Control U, Control D, this keybind will just make sure that every time it's centered. And another good mapping is the same thing for N and Shift N. So instead of when you're jumping and this just when you're ever searching for a word and searching, this keybind just having ZZ will make sure that your cursor will always stay on the same row here in the middle. That's a pretty good binding as well. Another keymap here is leader RP. So this is a remap that I have, and you can copy this if you want. I copied it from somewhere, I don't know where. But again, you can find all sorts of different keymaps that usually like how am I gonna come up with this? Like, what is this, right? But still leader RP. And this keymap, what it does is it just takes whatever word you're hovered on and will open in the command line, it will open a search and replace, right? So that for the whole file, it'll search for this word you have hovered and you can replace it with whatever. And of course, I bind it to RP, as in RP like replace. And this is another thing that you want to keep in mind when creating keybinds, which is that whenever you create a keybind, you should come up with something that is that you can remember for yourself, right? So for me, I set it to leader RP because in my mind, RP stands for replace, right? So that's memorable for me, and then I'll of course remember the keybinds, just like leader U for undo tree. Obviously U stand in my mind is undo, so leader U undo tree, right? Same thing for leader GG for lazy git. I think G as in git, right? So yeah, it's good to come up with keymaps that you will remember. Okay, last thing we're gonna be going over is that you see in our init.lua file, you'll see that we've gone over the options, we've gone over some commands I've set, we've gone over all of the plugins. Well, not all of them, but you know what I mean. We've gone over the plugins, we've gone over some keymaps. Now let's go over another folder which is called the after folder. So everything we've gone over so far is we've gone over the init.lua file at the base of our directory here, of our configuration directory. And then we've also gone over in the Lua directory in whatever folder you've named for your namespace for configuration. We've gone over everything in here. And then there's gonna be another folder, which you can create another directory called after. And in the after and plugin directory, you'll actually, all of these files here, instead of having to require them, like let's say here the init.lua, you'll see that we require our folder, which requires the init.lua, and then the init.lua, we have to require all of these things or else they don't work. Like let's say if I run build here, nothing happens because it's a Lua file. But if I run, let's say, you see that I've commented out this commands, this require commands. If I try run build now, you see that not an editor command build, and that's because in here we define this build command. Since I commented out the require, it doesn't run. But here in the after folder, every single file here will run after all the files that have been required in our init.lua. So after everything else, things in this folder will get required. And then personally, what I have in my configuration is just a lot of the plugin configurations in here. So for example, here, I just have a lot of the configuration for my different plugins that I have installed. So really, we can go over some examples, right? So let's say here for the comment plugin, usually this is the format that you'll see with a lot of plugins, which is you require whatever plugin you want, and you call this .setup function. So most Neovim plugins, they'll use this sort of, they'll use this sort of format where they'll have a setup function, and then you can pass in a map with all of the different options that you want to change. And for this, usually for any plugin, you can find an example of a setup and all of the example of the options in the README of the repositories of these functions. So let's look at the comment, right? And real quick, I'll just pull up the comments here, right? I would just open the comment.nvim repo, and you can see here the repository. You can you can see that it'll go over the features and stuff. It will go over the installation and stuff. And now you can see that I'll go over the setup. So this for this plugin, it says it's required to just call the setup method here in the setup function, which we do here, and then it even goes through some different configuration options. For this, you'll see that I've copy pasted over some of the configuration. Honestly, most of the time I don't even think I need this, right? Because by default, most of these will be completely most of these will have good default values. But if you wanted to, change some of the default values, like let's say for this, the toggler, the line comment toggle keymap, right? So remind, let's say if I press GCC, this will toggle if a line is commented or not. Here, let's say if you don't like that key binding, you can change it to something else. So if I GCC, you can change it to, I don't know, something like leader slash or something like that, and you can change it like that. So again, it all comes down to preference, what you want. But yeah, for most plugins, you can just find the specifics on how you set up stuff in the README of the repo. And that's what I've done for most of my That's what I've done for most of my plugins here. Just look on the repo, and they'll probably have something about how to set up their stuff. Obviously, well, it's their plugin. They're gonna provide information on how to set things up. So yeah, that was my Neovim configuration, and you can see this configuration in my dot files, and you can look through it. You can what's it called? It's good to look at others' configurations, see how they do stuff, and I do that very often. I look through other people's configurations. I see what plugins they use, and a lot of the time I'll find a very good plugin from someone else's configuration. I'm like, oh, I check out their configuration. Looks like they have a good config. I look through their dot files, and very often they'll have some plugin I've never heard about that ends up being very useful for me and will speed up your workflow, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it. Go set up your Neovim now. If you have any comments about what you think about my configuration, or if you have any comments, or what am I saying? If you have any questions about Neovim configuration or how to configure your Neovim, I do check the comments very often, so you can go down there and you can ask whatever question. I'll respond as quick as I can. You know what I'm saying? Because in these videos, honestly, I can't really go through everything in my plugins without it taking like an hour, right? Or like 2 hours, 1 hour, 2 hours. This video is probably gonna be long anyways. So again, if you have any questions, I'll answer them in the comments, and like the video if you think it helped. If it helped you at all, and subscribe for more content. Goodbye, everyone.